Hate the series so much, but we're back. We're back. We're continuing to talk about the Heritage Foundation. Uh, the horrors persist, so do we, right? We've been talking about the Heritage Foundation, their mandates for leadership, and we are into the Bush era. We've talked about Reagan, we've talked about Bush Sr., we've talked about Bill Clinton, we've talked about their shift into congressional power because they had an adversarial president in Bill Clinton. And we're trying to understand why the Heritage Foundation is the way that they are. It's hard to understand because they are like white supremacists. White supremacy is paradoxical at best. It's violent at worst, and it's all of the above all the time, right? So we know for a fact that the Heritage Foundation leaders did not want everyone to vote. It is created as a direct result to the civil rights movement in 1973, and as early as 1980, Paul Weyrich, the founder of both the Heritage Foundation and the Moral Majority, says this, a quote, "I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by the majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down." That's 1980. From the group Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, they call him the grandfather of Christian nationalism. And from all of my research, I very much tend to agree, right? So let's recap that Bill Clinton era, right? Heritage's mandates for leadership. If you don't remember, the Project 2025 is the ninth mandate for leadership. So Heritage's mandates for leadership shift their central ideals to Congress, because all of a sudden they have this adversarial president who is a Democrat named Bill Clinton. And Newt Gingrich actually puts out a book called The Contract for America, which hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Republican nominees for their four positions sign. They sign a contract and they say, if I don't follow this book, you kick me out. And they signed it on the steps of Congress. Literally, it was hundreds of them, right? The mandates under George W. Bush are exponentially shorter, right? We were looking in these early mandates, we're looking at very similar mandates to Project 2025, thousands of pages. These are closer to 150 pages, but George W. Bush stays on track with them pretty well, with the exception of No Child Left Behind. We'll talk about that at the end. Daddy Bush causes a problem with Heritage Foundation by raising taxes because, again, paradoxical at best, violent at worst. The goal is to never raise taxes, yet continuously raise the defense budget. Doesn't make sense. But of course, George W. Bush has 9/11. So 9/11 fits really great into this raising the defense budget. We start a lot of wars. We do the Patriot Act. We balloon our defense budget. And that's really all what Heritage was looking for. It's great news for them, right? So some other things that I don't really remember from the Bush era is the repealing of the 1984 Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. And if you have been here from the beginning, you know that Heritage Foundation actually planned that from the jump, right? This is 1984. This is Reagan's first term, towards the end of it. And they really pushed for it, but now 20 years later, they're pulling it back, right? They cheered the removal of Saddam Hussein. I think a lot of people did. Saddam Hussein was irrefutably a monster. However, by removing him from his space of power in Iraq, that created a power vacuum in the Middle East. And most international relations experts are going to tell you that we created the power vacuum that opened up the window for ISIS, among other terrorist groups. So as a reminder, in the 1990s, Heritage Foundation gets really deep into the culture wars with the Index on Cultural Indicators. And they start putting out differences between the 60s and the 90s. And they're tracking divorces, unwed mothers, single parent families, children being born out of wedlock, drug use, crime, all these things. And they think that the 90s and the early 2000s are exponentially worse than the 60s. Now, as a reminder, one of the big things that happened is no-fault divorces. And also women had got the capacity to get their own credit cards, houses, cars, etc. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, right? Yes, there might have been more single mothers, but it's probably because they were leaving people who didn't deserve to be in marriage or in a contract with them to raise children. So in keeping with the Heritage's social agenda, W's 2005 budget had $270 million set aside for abstinence education. Abstinence education doesn't work. We know this. Any educator will tell you that abstinence education doesn't work. Another portion of this is advocating for George W. Bush's Healthy Marriage Initiative. This is $300 million per year allocated to low-income families who are still married. Because again, like 35% of kids are born out of wedlock in the United States, and the Heritage Foundation is very, very anti out of wedlock children. On the more practical side, Heritage Foundation says that these single parents are a drain on the country's resources. They're not. It's pennies on the dollar. It's literally an investment into people. Anytime we have welfare programs that invest directly into people, we are investing in the people and the future of the United States. And those dollars go exponentially further than tax breaks for the uber wealthy, corporate tax loopholes, or anything like that. I just want to clear that up. Same-sex marriage. In 2004, 13 states had amended their constitution to allow for same-sex marriage. Now, same-sex marriage, as it pertains to the moral majority and the Heritage Foundation, is an assault on traditional marriage and traditional family values. Again, it's not. This is why I hate this fucking series. I can't. These fucking people are insane. None of this matters. This is all culture war bullshit that politicians cling to, and none of it fucking matters. Giving same-sex couples the same opportunities as man and wife couples is just normal. It's normal. Anyways, it's a rallying cry for evangelicals. The moral majority uses it to get people out to vote, and there's an argument that won certain swing states for Bush in 2004, okay? Now we get to the elephant in the room. No Child Left Behind. Now, No Child Left Behind, in my opinion, is the worst peace period legislation period in my lifetime. It's the worst, right? And if you remember from any of our previous episodes on this, the Heritage Foundation has been trying to dissolve the Department of Education since 1980, the federal Department of Education. They think it is a states' rights issue. So they were not behind the No Child Left Behind that actually got signed into law. The original No Child Left Behind that George W. Bush campaigned on was to actually limit federal government's involvement in state and local school boards and curriculum and et cetera. But from Congress, Ted Kennedy and a lot of the Democrats forced a compromise that the Heritage Foundation hated. Now, I need to remind you that teachers called No Child Left Behind no teacher left standing. The children got left behind. They got fucked. The children who were in this deeply got screwed. I was in middle and high school as this was rolling out, so I didn't actually really get it as much as some of the others. But when you meet people who have no critical thinking skills, who have never been trained on critical thinking, who cannot understand why an author would try to make them feel a certain way, who do not have functional literacy, that is all No Child Left Behind. The reason why the United States is the way that it is as it pertains to education right now is No Child Left Behind. The Heritage Foundation wanted to get an amendment that said that states could opt out of No Child Left Behind. Thank God they didn't, because somehow Oklahoma would be 59th in education instead of 50th. You know what I'm saying? But next week, we're going to dive into Obama's presidency, and in Heritage Foundation's words themselves, he unwinded everything they've ever done. Now I have to remind you, the Heritage Foundation is filled with racist fucks. So having a Black man win the highest position in the land with the most votes ever to date is really antithetical to their entire ethos. Good news is Paul Weyrich lived to see it. He died on December 8th. I can only imagine of a broken heart because all of his dreams were broken. And I hope it was painful because he created the Heritage Foundation and the Moral Majority, but also the American Legislative Exchange Council. And all of these things have lived on. And again, he is the granddaddy of Christian nationalism. So I am glad he's dead. And I'm so grateful. I hope he was lucid enough to see the election results.